Hello, Truth Transistors. Welcome to part 6 of this End Times study series. I forgot to make the intro video for this one, but that's all right. It's been a rough couple of months or so since I've made a couple of videos recently, but they weren't like it wasn't on this series that I didn't have to study much for them. But I got really sick, and then after that, I was just always exhausted, and I've kind of been having a lack of motivation on this series and moving forward. But I realized something that on this Olivet Discourse, it continues. I only went through a part of it, you know. But there's more to that, so I wanted to do that in this video. I'm not sure how, this may not be very long, but so that's what we are going to look at today. This is going to be Olivet Discourse Part 2, or Part 6 of the End Times series. So, I knew I said I was going to do Revelation, or start Revelation next, but I wanted to be thorough on this. So I'm going to share the screen and we will get to this. I wanted to show you first. So I didn't have these notes last time, but I thought I would do it again this time. So, this is an outline. When will these things be? Temple destroyed. What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age, etc.? Many will say, I am the Christ, and I will lead many astray, and the passages for that. Then you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but the end will not be all at once, is the way Luke has it there. The others say, anyway, I'm not going to go through all that again, but this will be for reference for if some of these things, like the abomination of desolation, if we see that in other passages and other books, because what I want to do is kind of compare and contrast, and this is just for my sake. But starting in part 2, I've got, starting with the parable of the fig tree. It's actually fairly short here, and all the books talk about the parable of the fig tree. And why don't we look at those real quick? Oops, let's see. Where, okay, Matthew 20, going back to 24, starting in, so we left off at the coming of the Son of Man, around verse 31. So I'm going to read this section here. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gate. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Now, I'm going to look at the other two as well, but I just wanted to point out something here. I think it was, do I have it up here somewhere? Eschatology timeline. Here we go. So this is the basic eschatology timeline, right? And I wanted to go over this again. So premillennial view believes that Christ returns sometime during this great tribulation. There's pre-trib, there's mid-trib, and then there's post-trib, there's pre-wrath, which could be somewhere in here. And there is, let me make this bigger here. Then there's the amill and post-mill view that both believe that Christ returns at the end of the millennium, maybe even at the end of Satan's little season. And then there's the full preterist view that believes they're pre-mill as well, but they believe this took place in the first. Oh, that's another thing. Futurists are most pre-mill people are futurists, believing that the Great Tribulation and all this stuff is in the future, and that the millennium follows that, and then you have Satan's little season. And the pre-mill preterists believe that the Great Tribulation was in the first century. The Antichrist was like Nero, and then the millennium is. They believe Jesus returned back then, and there was a resurrection of saints, and that there was this hidden millennium period. I find that to be hard to believe because there's no evidence for it. And then they say that we might be in, a lot of them believe we're in Satan's little season now. And anyway, but most pre-mill people are futurists and believe that all this will take place in the future, followed by when Christ returns, and then he will reign on earth with resurrected saints for 1,000 years, followed by Satan's little season and the final judgment. Amill and post-mill believe the Great Tribulation was in the first century, and that the millennium is the church age. And the difference between Amill and post-mill is the Amill believes that it's really just the gospel being preached to every tribe, tongue, and nation, and then the end will come. Whereas the post-mill is more optimistic. They believe that not only will the gospel reach every tribe, tongue, and nation, but it will prosper and change culture and Christianize just about every nation in the world. And then Satan's little season, followed by the final judgment. Now, I wanted to go over that again because if you go back to here, there's a phrase here that is a proof text for those that believe that this was fulfilled, that this chapter up to this point was fulfilled in the first century, where it says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." And I have to say, they have a good point with that. I have a response to it, but I think that you'd have to listen to their perspective on this, but they basically believe that the Great Tribulation was at the falling of Jerusalem, when Jerusalem was sacked, and that Nero was, reincarnated into the next, some other emperor that they believe was the Antichrist. Anyway, but anyway, I wanted to talk about this for 1 second because we're looking at this passage now. They would say that this is talking about the first century, and that this verse proves it. "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." The way I understand it, but I'm open to change. In fact, I was talking to a post-millennialist the other day, my cousin, and told him I am open. And that's why I'm doing this study series, because I've always been pretty strong of a futurist, but I'm open to change because there's a strong case that the Olivet Discourse was talking about the destruction of the temple. I mean, that's one thing they asked about. But the way I respond to this is it says, so also the verse before it, "When you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates." Now, he's talking about what is he talking about? He is near here, because right up here it says the Son of Man. So it's talking about the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. Now, the way that the post-mill, amill, or they explain this is that it's not the second coming, but it's like in judgment against Jerusalem. That's how they respond to that. And I'm not saying I agree with that, but it's something that we have to take into, I think we need to be open to these ideas. because I always look at this as the second coming, but the partial preterists believe that this is talking about Christ coming as a judge, like to judge Jerusalem, not physically returning, but anyway, that's what this is referring to. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man to gather all the tribes of the earth. And then you see the fig tree and its lesson. So also, when you see all these things, what things? The things leading up to the return of the Son of Man. If you go back to the previous video, all this stuff here, including the abomination of desolation and a great tribulation, is before this event here. So however you want to define that, whatever this coming of the Son of Man is in the clouds, all the things that happened before that will happen in that generation, or the generation that Jesus was in, talking to the people, or a future generation that will see all these things take place. And so that, to me, this is a key to understanding verse 34, where it says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." The next verse says, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." Now, I don't think any of us believe that heaven and earth passes away during this great tribulation period, and when the Son of Man appears in the clouds, at least in this context. So that wouldn't be a good argument either way anyway. He's just saying that eventually that will happen. Now, if you're just looking at this passage, you might think that that's when heaven and earth passes away. But I have other reasons to suggest that there is a lot that will happen before that takes place, and that none of the views view it that way. Unless, now let me just to make things more confusing, there is another view that says this great tribulation period is actually after the millennium. And I think that's kind of a stretch. Most people view it this way, regardless of whether they believe this part is past or future, in this order here. But there is one person I believe that I've heard suggest that all this stuff here is still future, but they're post-millennial. So they believe the Great Tribulation is after the millennium. I have issues with that, but we'll get to that later on when we get to the end of Revelation. So I just wanted to point that out real quick. But generally speaking, I don't think any of the views believe that heaven and earth pass away right after all this other stuff. But yeah, so that's the fig tree, and then let's see what it says about the fig tree in Mark 13 real quick. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. So it's pretty much the same thing, same wording. I believe Luke has it a little differently. So let's just go to that one. Verse 29, and he told them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. As soon as they come out of leaf, see for yourselves and know that the summer is already near. So also when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly I say to you, this generation, let's see, was there anything different? You know that the kingdom of God is near. Okay, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all has taken place. Heaven and earth will pass. Very similar. Now I will say this part here. So they believe that the church age is the kingdom, right? A lot of us, the futurists, believe that the kingdom will happen after Christ returns. But the wording there really isn't much different there as well. So let's look at the next section, the days of Noah and the coming of the Son of Man. One will be taken and the other left. This is only found in Matthew 24, verse 36 through 44. So let's look at that next. Yeah. But concerning the day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Real quickly, I want to pause there and just say, to me, the connection with Noah's flood, some people will talk about the giants and all that, but it doesn't really mention that here. I think it's just that this judgment, this global judgment took place at that time. 2 Peter 3 is one that we won't look at now, but he says just like it was judged with water back then, it will be judged with fire in the future. But anyway, and so then two men, so now it gets off into a little thing. The two men will be in the field, one will be taken, one left. Two women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. So this is the only book. The other two do not talk about Noah and one being taken, the other left. A lot of people equate this to the rapture, but it seems to be indicating that the one taken is the one, like the people that were taken out in the flood, that you don't want to be taken in this case. So I don't know if this is talking about the rapture. I get the sense that the one taken is the one that is killed or whatever. The one that when Christ returns, he judges and destroys. That would be my take. And I'm sure that even the post and Amill that believed this was a first century fulfillment would say the same thing. But many, I don't have a problem either with the rapture idea on this as well. So that's just a thought. But okay. Is there anything I wanted to mention on this? I think that's just being ready, being aware, being alert. So therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Okay, so the next section is stay awake and be alert like the wise servant. So now it's this parable of a wise servant or a story. And this is in all three. So let's look at the next section. Verse 45, this is in Matthew. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his master has set over his household, to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom the master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to him, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants, and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of the servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces, and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So this is the first mention of like a final judgment. Now it's kind of interesting though, because it still seems to be in the, I have to, I'm telling you what I'm seeing right now. Because usually when I see this, I associate that with the final judgment. This is talking about going back. It seems to all be connected to the coming of the Son of Man in the clouds. And and this all seems to be in the context of that. So so those who are post-Amil or those who believe in a first century fulfillment of this thing that say it's just the judgment, they would have to say that all of these warnings have to do with that, and even the weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now this is saying in that place, so it could be talking about, let's see, wicked servant says, let's see, the master to that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, at an hour. So if this is talking about the first century Jerusalem being destroyed, I'm wondering what they would say about this part here. I suppose that once they die, like the people in Jerusalem that were killed would be in this place of weeping and gnashing of teeth, which if you went through my series on once to die and then the judgment, I did some on the two hells, or Hades and Gehenna and all that stuff. I would assume that this is not talking about the final judgment. This is talking about right after the Great Tribulation, this period when the Son of Man appears in the clouds. So, so either this is after they die, or it's talking about when they are killed in Jerusalem. That's if it's a first century. But even in this futurist perspective that I hold, there's still 1,000 years before the final judgment after this takes place, regardless of which view you hold. I mean, post and Amil don't believe in a literal 1,000 years because it's already been 2,000 years. But what I'm saying is, whatever this is before the millennium. It's right when Christ, the Son of Man, appears in the clouds. Now, I did mention in the last view that with a loud trumpet call, which seems to be parallel to a different passage on that. But but that's interesting. So this phrase here, I'm trying to see if there's any indication that they are like dead. He does not expect him, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. So, I mean, I suppose this part here suggests that they died. They were killed, right? And I would say this is Hades. This is the intermediate state we've talked about in a different series. So if you want to learn more about what I think about that, do I have that chart here somewhere? Let me see if I can find it. So just in case you haven't looked through the, I thought I had it here somewhere. Well, let me look at this one. No, well, this is just universalism, but I had one for annihilation and I had one for all three views, but now I can't find it. So don't tell me it's gone. Wait, what is saved? Okay, here we go. Yeah, so basically, so somebody is born, they die. From my study of Scripture, this section here is Hades, or Sheol, Hades, and then after the resurrection, there is the final judgment, and the lost will be cast into the lake of fire. Valley of Hinnom, Gehenna, is often used in relation to that. So because I believe this is talking about before the millennium, no matter which view you hold, this is all in connection to the return of the Son of Man in the clouds. And so regardless of which view you hold, this phrase is referring to before the millennium. So it's not even talking about the lake of fire here. It's talking about either they're being killed on earth physically or in Hades, in the waiting place. So just like the rich man was in Luke 16. But anyway, I thought that was interesting because usually I see that phrase and I just associate it with final judgment. Okay, so let's look at Mark 13, verse 32. But concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or on the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. So it's very similar language there, but it doesn't have that phrase about weeping and gnashing of teeth in this one. But it's a similar thing about a servant. Luke 21, but watch yourselves lest your hearts be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and cares of this life, and that day came upon you suddenly like a trap, for it will come upon all who dwell on the face of the whole earth. But stay awake at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that are going to take place and to stand before the Son of Man. Once again, it doesn't have the weeping and gnashing of teeth here, but it does also talk about being alert. Now, this section here doesn't really apply to anything. It's just saying that Jesus kept teaching at the temples. But that is the end of Mark 13 and Luke 21. So the rest of this will be just in Matthew. So Matthew continues on. And first you have this parable of 10 virgins. I think, honestly, the parable of the 10 virgins and the parable of the talents are just a continuation of that thought of of keeping watch and being ready. So I'm not going to read through all that, but you can read through those yourselves. These are just parables about staying watch. The conclusion of the virgins, watch therefore, you know not neither the day nor the hour. At the end of the talents, it says, and cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So it uses that once again in this parable. And then we continue on, and there's mention of what appears to be the final judgment here. Now, I want to state that from my understanding, you have the Great Tribulation, you have this appearing of the Son of Man in the clouds, and then you have the millennium, and then you have the final judgment. And I say that because of Revelation. But here, it just goes straight into this part here. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Now, I will say, is it possible that this is referring to his second coming and starting the millennium? So that's kind of how I would understand it from other books and things that we're going to look at. But I'm just, thinking out loud. Okay, before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on the right, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on the right, come you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Now this could all be referring to the millennium as well. All this that we've read so far. And then it talks about, for I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me drink. They're asking, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And he says, When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And then he says, truly I say to you, as you did to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. Now he says basically the same thing, but these are the ones that did not welcome them. Or he says, you did this to me. Let's see. For I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. And they asked the same question. When did we not give you drink? And he goes, truly I say to you, do not do it on one of the least of these. You did it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Now this seems to be talking about the final judgment here. So I think it's very possible, and I have a reason to think this, that starting here we have the millennium. The millennium is talking about all this, but at the end of the millennium you have the final judgment. But it just doesn't really say much about it. But I think that could be true regardless of which eschatological view one holds. So I am open on that, but that's kind of how I see it. I think that was the end of, yeah, it is. So this was a fairly short video because, let's see, here we go. I just wanted to finish the Olivet Discourse. I didn't realize that it was, it continued. I always seem to forget that part. I was just so excited to get to the Great Tribulation, Abomination of Desolation part. But all of that is applicable to end times. So I think this is going to be a short video, and I'll just leave it at that. So next time we will start Revelation, and I need to motivate myself to start making notes. And I'm sure Revelation will take several parts. I don't know how many, because it's a pretty long book. I think what I'm going to do is look at the longest books first, and then we will work our way to shorter prophecy books as well. And we will look at other passages that talk about end times, even though they're not from prophecy books necessarily. So I really don't know what my view will be when this all ends. I'm kind of open right now. I have an idea of what I believe now, but there are certain things that are making me question a few things about end times. So I'm convinced that doing this study, I will learn a lot. And all right, so thank you all and have a wonderful day.